Hollywood sign, how it almost disappeared forever. With almost 50 million visitors a year, the cultural icon that is the Hollywood sign is one of the most visited spots on the planet. But backtrack a couple of decades, and the sign was so badly destroyed that the community didn't want it anymore. And it almost disappeared. Forever. From its beginnings as an advertisement to being heavily guarded 24 hours a day, this is the express story of the Hollywood sign. Hello and welcome to our channel. In today's video, we look at the incredible story of the Hollywood sign as we mark 100 years of its existence. We look at how it started, from its commercial beginnings as a real estate advert to getting so deteriorated that the letters were literally falling off, and then being restored to the iconic monument that we have today. Stick to the end for some fun facts you probably didn't know about this cultural sign. So, let's dive right in. 1923, the birth of the very first Hollywood sign. Did you know that the Hollywood sign we have today is less than half a century old? That's right. While the Hollywood sign is celebrating 100 years in 2023, the original sign was actually replaced with the one we see today. So, what was there before? The original Hollywood sign, which actually read Hollywoodland, was first put up in 1923 by real estate developers Woodruff and Schultz. Located on Mount Lee in Griffith Park in Los Angeles, United States, the sign was an advertisement for their brand new gated community. The housing project targeted people for a bit more affordable homes as compared to what was on offer then in Hollywood Hills. Now, the sign company that was given the job came up with a 50-foot high, 30-foot wide wooden sign in block letters. It came complete with 4,000 light bulbs that flashed Holly, wood, and land consecutively, and then followed by the entire word. And just below the sign was a searchlight. Did you know that the artist behind the sign was actually an Englishman? Yes, Thomas Fisk Goff, a London-born artist and owner of Crescent Sign Company, created the Hollywood sign. Now, was the project expensive? Absolutely. It cost Woodruff and Schultz $21,000. Adjust that for inflation, and it's about $360,000 now. Fun fact, despite the cost, the sign was erected to last just 1.5 years. 1932, the tragic story of Peg Entwistle and the Hollywood sign. Now, we can't talk about the history of the Hollywood sign without going over the tragic true-life story of Peg Entwistle. A bigger celebrity in death than in the 24 years that she lived, Entwistle was a British screen and stage actress who appeared in the film 13 Women. Unfortunately, the film wasn't the reason she became famous. In fact, it was released posthumously. She is famous for jumping off the original Hollywood sign and plunging to her death. She left a chilling suicide note, which helped understand her mental state at the time of the tragedy. But this was also at the peak of the Great Depression, and life was difficult for most people. To this day, Peg Entwistle is a legend, and people still gather to mark her anniversary. Mid-1940s, the sign is destroyed. In the now classic movie The Earthquake, which came out in 1974, the Hollywood letters fall apart and cascade down the hill one after the other. It was the first movie to depict the destruction of the iconic sign. Soon after, Superman 1978 and several other movies would show the sign destroyed in all kinds of ways. But did you know, long before it was on our screen, the Hollywood sign was actually destroyed and nearly forgotten? But it wasn't an earthquake. In the 1940s, less than 2 decades after it was first erected, the sign was so damaged it was an eyesore. The letter H had actually fallen down. The deterioration had a lot to do with the fact that it needed a lot of care and maintenance, and no one was doing it. Anyway, the community around it had had enough and wanted it gone. The owners of the piece of land where it stood sold it to the city, and everyone thought that finally it would be demolished. 1949, the Hollywood sign gets a new lease of life. Even though the sign was in bad shape, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce came to rescue it. They agreed to cover the sign's future lighting expenses before officially revamping it in 1949. But this didn't stop the deterioration process. You see, while some maintenance work was done to bring the sign back to life, there wasn't anything put in place to protect it from the elements, and they can be brutal. So, not very long after, the first O gave way and broke down after a couple of windstorms, making it look like a lowercase u. Then, in the 1970s, the third O fell completely. Later, an arsonist set fire to the bottom of the second L, adding to the destruction. 1978, second round of repair efforts. By the late 70s, the deterioration was so bad that the Hollywood Chamber began making attempts to remedy the situation for good. Since the damage was pretty extensive, a new sign was needed. And for that, the Chamber needed money. And a lot of it. So, they began fundraising for the new planned structure. Thanks to Hugh Hefner, famous for founding the Playboy magazine, several celebs actually joined in the public campaign. Singer Andy Williams, for instance, paid for the letter W, while cowboy singer Gene Autry paid for the letter L. Rock singer Alice Cooper joined in, paying for the letter O. And so, the restoration process began. The new sign would read Hollywood and would be 45 foot tall, 31 to 39 foot broad, and 450 foot long. At the time of completion, in November 1978, the structure was the largest letter sign on the planet. It was officially unveiled on a CBS special for the entire country to watch. Fun fact, though the Hollywood sign has stood for the century, there were actually 3 months in 1978, during the construction process, where there was no Hollywood sign. Yes, Mount Lee was not much different from other peaks. 1992, the Hollywood Sign Trust Fund. If history has taught us one thing, it's that without maintenance, the Hollywood sign will disappear in the not-so-distant future. So, in 1992, a fund, dubbed the Hollywood Sign Trust Fund, was established with the goal of managing the sign. It continues to care for the sign up to this day. Now, what are some exciting facts about the Hollywood sign? Don't have money to travel all the way to see the sign yourself? There are actually webcams installed behind the sign for remote viewing. So, you can see it for yourself no matter where you are on the globe. 2. If you want to actually see the sign, you can't just walk up to it. Getting close to the sign is harder than you think, as it's heavily guarded 24 hours. Trespassing can actually see you pay a hefty amount of fines. And it's easy to see why, given the number of times people have tried to damage the sign. But if you want, you can get relatively close for that awe-inspiring view, and of course some pictures, by hiking up the mountain within Griffith Park. The poles that supported the original sign were carried to the site by mules. It was the 1930s, and this wasn't as strange as it would be today. There are nearly a dozen places you can view the Hollywood sign from and take photos. From hiking trails in Griffith Park to Griffith Observatory and the Hollywood and Highland Center, there are so many places you can explore if you want to get a glimpse of the structure. And we can't forget the funny to bizarre pranks that pranksters have pulled on the sign. The most famous of which is during Pope John Paul II's visit to Los Angeles, when pranksters draped a huge black tarp on the letter L so that it read Hollywood. It has also been altered to other things like Hollyweed. Now, have you seen the Hollywood sign in person? What was the most interesting thing about it for you? Leave us a comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more mind-blowing videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.